Black CEO denied service at bank by racist teller. 10 minutes later, she gets fired on the spot. When Amara Johnson walked into Meridian Bank wearing a hoodie, the teller saw a threat, not the CEO who owned half the building. The morning rain had soaked through Amara Johnson's favorite gray hoodie as she jogged through downtown Seattle. At 34, she still preferred the rhythm of her feet on pavement to any boardroom meditation app. But today's run had been cut short by an urgent call from her assistant. "Ms. Johnson, I'm so sorry to interrupt your morning routine." Maya's voice had crackled through her earbuds. "But the Meridian Bank situation is escalating. They're threatening to freeze the construction loan for the community center project if we don't provide additional documentation by noon today." Amara had stopped mid-stride, her breath forming small clouds in the cool October air. The Riverside Community Center meant everything to her. A $3.2 million project that would bring job training, childcare, and hope to the neighborhood where she'd grown up poor. "What additional documentation?" she'd asked, already knowing the answer would frustrate her. "They want 3 years of personal tax returns, detailed business projections, and they want to meet with you personally to verify your identity and commitment to the project." The coded language wasn't lost on Amara. She'd built tech-forward solutions from a one-woman consulting firm into a $50 million software company. But apparently, that wasn't enough for some people to believe a young black woman could handle a community development project. Now, 45 minutes later, she stood outside Meridian Bank's flagship branch, water still dripping from her hood. She'd meant to go home and change, but time was running out. The community center groundbreaking was scheduled for next month, and dozens of families were counting on those jobs. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The bank's marble lobby gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights as Amara pushed through the heavy glass doors. Her sneakers squeaked softly against the polished floor. She approached the customer service counter, where a blonde woman in her 50s sat typing at a computer, her nameplate reading Patricia Winters, Senior Teller. "Excuse me," Amara said politely, pulling back her hood. "I need to speak with someone about a commercial loan. I have an appointment." Patricia looked up, and her expression shifted instantly. Her eyes swept over Amara's casual clothing, lingering on the hoodie with obvious distaste. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back," Patricia said, her voice sharp. "We have security protocols." Amara blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me. Step back from the counter." Patricia's hand moved toward a button beneath her desk, the silent alarm. "There's been a misunderstanding," Amara said, keeping her voice calm despite her rising pulse. "I'm Amara Johnson, CEO of Tech Forward Solutions. I have a noon appointment about the Riverside Community Center loan." Patricia's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England." She stood up, her voice carrying across the lobby. "Security." Other customers began to turn and stare. Amara felt heat creep up her neck, not from embarrassment, but from a familiar rage she'd learned to contain in corporate boardrooms. "If you could just check your appointment book." "I don't need to check anything," Patricia interrupted. "I know trouble when I see it. You people always have some story." The words hung in the air like poison. "You people." A security guard approached, a heavy-set man whose badge read Mike Rodriguez. He looked uncomfortable as he glanced between Patricia and Amara. "Is there a problem here?" Mike asked. "This person is claiming to be some CEO," Patricia said, practically spitting the word. "She's probably here to case the place or cause trouble." I want her escorted out immediately. Amara pulled out her phone, opening her calendar app. Officer, my name is Amara Johnson. If you'll just look here, I have a confirmed appointment with David Chun, your commercial lending manager, at 12 o'clock. It's 11:45 right now. Mike looked at the phone, then at Patricia, uncertainty creasing his features. Ma'am, if you have an appointment, don't be fooled by whatever fake documents she's showing you, Patricia snapped. Anyone can Photoshop a calendar. Look at how she's dressed. What kind of CEO shows up looking like that? The lobby had grown quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic outside. Amara became acutely aware that every eye in the building was on her. The security cameras, the other customers, even the bank manager visible through his glass office door. The kind who was jogging when she got an urgent call about a project that will employ 50 people in an underserved community, Amara said, her voice carrying more authority now. The kind who didn't want to be late because people are counting on this loan. But Patricia had already made up her mind. I'm calling the police, she announced loudly. We can't be too careful these days. Mike held up his hands. Patricia, let's just... No. Patricia's voice echoed off the marble walls. I've seen this before. They come in here dressed down, acting entitled, trying to intimidate us. Well, not on my watch. Amara felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't just about clothing or assumptions. This was deeper, uglier. This was the same poison that had followed her from the housing projects to Harvard Business School, that had made her fight twice as hard for every contract, every investor meeting, every ounce of respect. She pulled out her business card, thick, expensive cardstock with embossed lettering, and placed it on the counter. My card. Tech Forward Solutions. If you could just call David Chun. Patricia didn't even look at it. I don't care what fake business cards you've printed. You're not a CEO, and you don't belong in this bank. The words hit like physical blows. Behind Patricia, other tellers had stopped working, watching the confrontation unfold. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed to be enjoying the drama. That's when the bank's front door chimed, and a familiar voice cut through the tension like a knife. Amara? What the hell is going on here? David Chun, the commercial lending manager, stood in the doorway, his usually composed face flushed with confusion and anger. He'd just returned from lunch and walked straight into a nightmare. Patricia's confidence wavered for the first time. Mr. Chun, You were just what? David's voice carried across the lobby as he strode toward them. Harassing my 12 o'clock appointment? The CEO of one of our biggest commercial clients. The color drained from Patricia's face. Around the lobby, other customers began to whisper, pieces clicking into place. That's impossible, Patricia stammered. Look at how she's dressed. CEOs don't. Patricia. David's voice was ice cold now. Ms. Johnson's company has over $12 million in accounts with this bank. She's financing a community development project that will employ dozens of people. And you just accused her of being a criminal because she's wearing a hoodie. The silence that followed was deafening. Mike, the security guard, took a step back, his face crimson with embarrassment. Amara stood perfectly still, watching Patricia's world crumble in real time. But there was no satisfaction in it, only a bone-deep weariness that came from fighting this same battle over and over again. David, Amara said quietly, perhaps we should discuss the loan in your office. But David wasn't done. His face had gone from confusion to fury as the full implications sank in. No, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the lobby. We're going to address this right here, right now. What do you think should happen to Patricia? Is this her first time treating someone this way, or part of a pattern? Let me know in the comments. David Chun had been Amara's commercial banker for 3 years, and in that time, he'd watched her transform from a promising startup founder into one of Seattle's most respected tech entrepreneurs. He'd also witnessed, more than once, the subtle and not-so-subtle discrimination she faced in business settings. But this was beyond anything he'd imagined. "Patricia," David said, his voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made boardrooms go silent, "I need you to explain to me, in front of all these witnesses, why you threatened to call the police on a woman whose business accounts represent more annual revenue than your salary for the next 50 years. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Around the lobby, customers had stopped pretending not to watch. Phone cameras were discreetly pointed in their direction. I was just following protocol," Patricia managed. She looked suspicious. "Suspicious how?" Amara interjected, stepping forward. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "Please be specific, Ms. Winters. What exactly about me looked suspicious?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Patricia's eyes darted around the lobby, looking for support that wasn't coming. Even the other tellers had distanced themselves, suddenly very busy with their computers. "You were dressed inappropriately for a business meeting," Patricia said weakly. "Inappropriately?" Amara nodded slowly. "I see. And tell me, Ms. Winters, what's the dress code for banking customers? Is there a manual you follow that specifies hoodies are—" "What was your word, threatening?" David watched the exchange with growing horror. He could see where this was heading, and it was going to be a disaster for the bank. "Amara," he said quietly, "maybe we should." "No, David." Amara's voice was gentle but firm. "Ms. Winters was very concerned about protocol. I think we should let her explain these protocols to everyone." A young woman near the back of the lobby had her phone out, clearly recording. The older man in line behind her was shaking his head in disgust. By the water cooler, 2 bank employees watched with mounting anxiety. Patricia realized she was trapped. Every word she said was making things worse, but silence would be an admission of guilt. "Look, you have to understand," Patricia said, desperation creeping into her voice. "We've had incidents before. People coming in trying to, you know." "No, I don't know," Amara said. "Please tell us about these incidents. What did these people look like? What were they wearing? What made them suspicious?" The trap was closing, and Patricia knew it. Her face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "Fine," she snapped. "You want the truth? People like you don't walk into banks like this dressed like they're going to rob the place. Normal customers show respect." The lobby erupted. "Jesus Christ, Patricia." The voice belonged to Margaret Torres, the bank's regional manager, who had just emerged from the elevator. She must have been watching from upstairs, because she moved with the urgency of someone trying to prevent a catastrophe. But it was too late. "Did she just?" someone whispered. "Oh my God, she really said that," another voice added. David looked like he might be sick. "Patricia, you need to stop talking. Right now." But Patricia was past the point of rational thought. 3 years of resentment, at younger customers who seemed entitled, at people who questioned her authority, at changes in a world she no longer recognized, came pouring out. "I've worked at this bank for 15 years, she shouted. "I've served thousands of customers, and I can tell when someone belongs here and when they don't. I don't care how much money she claims to have, nobody talks to me like that." Margaret Torres reached them, her face pale with fury. "Patricia Winters, you are suspended immediately. Security will escort you out." "What?" Patricia's voice cracked. "Margaret, you can't. I was protecting the bank. I was doing my job. Your job, Margaret said, her voice shaking with controlled rage, is to serve customers with respect and professionalism. Your job is not to racially profile people based on their clothing choices. The words racially profile cut through the lobby like a blade. Several customers gasped audibly. Patricia's face went white. That's not, I never said anything about race. Amara stepped forward again, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of every boardroom she'd conquered, every contract she'd won, every barrier she'd broken through. Ms. Winters, she said quietly, you didn't have to. The lobby doors chimed again, and this time, 3 people in expensive suits walked in. Amara recognized them immediately. James Sullivan and Rebecca Martinez from the Seattle Business Journal, and behind them, Thomas Park from Channel 7 News. Margaret Torres cursed under her breath. Someone had tipped off the media. Ms. Johnson, Rebecca called out, raising her hand. Rebecca Martinez, Seattle Business Journal. Can you comment on what just happened here? David stepped protectively closer to Amara. No comment. This is a private banking matter. Actually, Amara said, her voice carrying clearly across the lobby, I think the community has a right to know how Meridian Bank treats its customers. Margaret Torres looked like she might faint. The bank stock price, customer relations, regulatory compliance issues. She could see the dominoes falling in her mind. Ms. Johnson, please, Margaret said desperately. Perhaps we could discuss this privately in my office? The time for private discussions was before your employee accused me of being a criminal, Amara replied. She turned to face the reporters directly. My name is Amara Johnson. I'm the CEO of Tech Forward Solutions and a customer of this bank. I came here today for a routine appointment about financing a community center that will serve low-income families in South Seattle. The cameras rolled as she continued. Instead, I was threatened, insulted, and told I didn't belong here by Ms. Winters, who assumed I was dangerous because of how I was dressed and, let's be honest, how I look. Thomas Park stepped forward with his microphone. Ms. Johnson, are you saying you were discriminated against because of your race? Before Amara could answer, Patricia's voice cut through the crowd like a desperate shriek. That's a lie. I treat everyone the same. This is reverse racism. The lobby went dead silent. Even the reporters looked shocked at the outburst. Margaret Torres closed her eyes in defeat. Patricia had just guaranteed that this story would lead every newscast in the city. Mike Rodriguez, the security guard who had been standing quietly through the whole ordeal, finally spoke up. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but that's not true. All eyes turned to him. His face was troubled, like a man wrestling with his conscience. Mike, Margaret warned, you don't need to. Yes, I do, he interrupted. 3 weeks ago, Patricia called me over because she said a suspicious character was loitering near the ATM. It was Dr. Williams from the medical center across the street. He was just checking his balance. Patricia's face went ashen. That was different. He was a 70-year-old black man in a business suit, Mike continued. Last month, she insisted I keep an eye on the Martinez family when they came in to open a college savings account for their daughter. She said something about those people always trying to get loans they can't afford. Margaret Torres sank into a nearby chair. The bank's legal department was going to have a field day with this. Mike, please stop, she whispered. But Mike was done being complicit. Ma'am, I've got 2 daughters. I can't stand here and watch this anymore. Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry for what happened to you. I should have spoken up earlier. That's when Amara's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Mayor Daniels. She answered on speakerphone, loud enough for everyone to hear. Amara, I just heard what happened at Meridian Bank. Are you okay? The mayor of Seattle was calling her. Patricia looked like she might collapse. I'm fine, Sarah. Just dealing with some customer service issues. Good. Because I wanted to let you know personally, the City Council just approved the additional matching funds for the Riverside Community Center project. We're increasing our investment to $5 million. The reporter's eyes lit up. This was getting better by the minute. Thank you, Sarah. That means the world to the community. It means the world to me, too. What you're doing for that neighborhood, it's exactly the kind of leadership this city needs. In fact, I was calling to see if you'd consider running for city council next year. Margaret Torres looked like she was having a heart attack. Not only had they discriminated against a major customer, they'd discriminated against someone the mayor wanted to recruit for public office. Patricia Winters slowly sank into a chair behind the counter, the reality of her situation finally hitting her. Sarah, can I call you back? I'm in the middle of something right now. Of course. But Amara, whatever bank gave you trouble today just made a very expensive mistake. The line went dead, and the lobby remained silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the quiet clicking of camera shutters. David Chen's phone buzzed with a text message. He looked at it and went pale. What now? Margaret asked weakly. It's from upstairs, David said. Mr. Harrison wants to see everyone in the conference room. Now. William Harrison was the bank president. Margaret had never seen him come down from the executive floor for anything less than a federal audit. Who's everyone? Margaret asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. You meet Patricia and... David looked at Amara apologetically. Anyone else involved in this incident? Rebecca Martinez stepped forward again. Ms. Johnson, will you be pursuing legal action against the bank? Amara looked around the lobby, at Patricia, who sat defeated behind the counter, at Margaret, who looked like she was planning her resignation, at Mike, who had found the courage to do the right thing too late, at David, who was a good man caught in an impossible situation. Then she looked at the cameras, knowing that her next words would be replayed on every news program in the city. You know what I think this community needs to see, she said, addressing the reporters but speaking to everyone. What happens when people are held accountable for their actions? What happens when institutions choose to do better instead of just covering up? She turned to Margaret. Ms. Torres, I'll meet with Mr. Harrison. But I have conditions. The executive conference room on the 15th floor of Meridian Bank had floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of Seattle's skyline. Under normal circumstances, Amara would have appreciated the irony. She could see her own office building from here, the gleaming tower that housed Tech Forward Solutions just 6 blocks away. But these weren't normal circumstances. William Harrison sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, a man in his early 60s whose silver hair and tailored suit spoke of old money and older power. He'd built Meridian Bank from a regional player into a West Coast powerhouse, and his reputation for ruthless efficiency was legendary in financial circles. Around the table sat the principal players in what was already being called the Meridian Incident on social media. Margaret Torres, looking like she was facing a firing squad, David Chun, nervously adjusting his tie, Patricia Winters, who had been crying in the bathroom for 10 minutes before security escorted her upstairs, and Amara herself, still wearing the hoodie that had started this whole mess. The reporters had been asked to wait in the lobby, but Amara knew they weren't going anywhere. This story had legs. Ms. Johnson, Harrison began, his voice carrying the kind of authority that had cowed corporate boards for decades. I want to apologize personally for what happened downstairs. This is not how Meridian Bank conducts business. Amara studied his face, looking for sincerity behind the corporate damage control. Mr. Harrison, with respect, This is exactly how your bank conducts business. The only difference is that today, someone was paying attention. Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. He wasn't used to being contradicted, especially not by someone sitting in his conference room wearing athletic wear. I understand you're upset. Upset? Amara's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. Mr. Harrison, I'm not upset. I'm calculating. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Do you know what I've been thinking about for the last 20 minutes? Not my hurt feelings, not my wounded pride. I've been thinking about numbers. Margaret Torres shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Patricia remained silent, her earlier bravado completely gone. What kind of numbers? Harrison asked cautiously. Amara turned back to face the table. The kind that matter to shareholders. The kind that matter to regulatory agencies. The kind that matter to the community leaders who decide where their institutions do business. She pulled out her phone and opened a banking app. Tech Forward Solutions currently has $12.7 million in accounts with Meridian Bank. Our payroll, our operational accounts, our expansion fund, all of it runs through your institution. Harrison's jaw tightened imperceptibly. But here's the interesting part, Amara continued, settling back into her chair. I'm not just a customer. I'm a connector. Last month alone, I referred 4 other tech companies to David's commercial lending department. Combined business value? $43 million. David looked up sharply. He'd been wondering how all those referrals had suddenly started coming in. The Riverside Community Center project represents another $8 million in construction loans, equipment financing, and long-term operational credit. But more than that, I'm on the Economic Development Committee for South Seattle. We're deciding which banks get to participate in a $120 million urban renewal initiative. The room went dead silent. Harrison's face had gone pale. Ms. Johnson, he said carefully, what exactly are you proposing? I'm not proposing anything yet, Amara replied. I'm just making sure we all understand the stakes. She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. Patricia, you called me you people. You assumed I was a criminal because of how I looked. You threatened to call the police on me for the crime of existing in your space while black. Patricia flinched as if she'd been slapped. Margaret, you've been managing this branch for how long? 3 years? And in that time, how many complaints have you received about Patricia's treatment of minority customers? Margaret's silence was answer enough. David, you're a good man who found himself in an impossible situation. But you knew this was happening, didn't you? The Martinez family Mike mentioned, you handled that account personally. David nodded miserably. I tried to address it through proper channels, which accomplished exactly nothing, Amara finished. She turned to Harrison. And you, Mr. Harrison, you run an institution that holds itself out as a pillar of the community, while systematically treating people, like me, as threats to be managed rather than customers to be served. Harrison's face was flushed with anger now. Ms. Johnson, I won't sit here and be lectured. Yes, you will. The words cut through the room like a blade. Amara's voice hadn't risen, but something in her tone made it clear that the power dynamic had fundamentally shifted. Because downstairs, there are 3 reporters waiting for me to tell them whether Meridian Bank is the kind of institution that Seattle can trust with its future. And in about 10 minutes, my assistant is going to call me with the contact information for the NAACP, the Urban League, and the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions. She paused, letting that sink in. In an hour, I have a conference call scheduled with the mayor's economic development team to discuss banking partnerships for the next fiscal year. And tonight, I'm having dinner with 5 other black business owners who collectively represent over $200 million in regional economic activity. Harrison's corporate poker face was cracking. What do you want? I want accountability, Amara said simply. Real accountability, not corporate PR nonsense. She pulled out a tablet and opened a document she'd been composing during the elevator ride upstairs. Patricia Winters is fired, effective immediately, with no severance and no recommendation letter. Her personnel file will reflect the reason for termination, and any future employer reference calls will be answered honestly. Patricia made a small choking sound, but no one looked at her. Margaret Torres implements mandatory bias training for all customer-facing employees within 30 days, with quarterly follow-up sessions. Any employee who receives more than one verified complaint about discriminatory behavior is terminated. Margaret nodded quickly. David Chun is promoted to Senior Commercial Lending Manager with authority to override any customer service decisions that appear discriminatory. David blinked in surprise. The bank commits $50,000 to sponsor job training programs at the Riverside Community Center, with preference given to local residents. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. Ms. Johnson. And finally, Amara continued, Meridian Bank establishes a community advisory board with real authority to review lending practices and customer complaints. I'll serve on that board for the first year to ensure it has teeth. She closed the tablet and looked around the table. Those are my conditions for not taking this story to every media outlet between here and Silicon Valley. That's when Patricia Winters finally spoke up, her voice trembling with rage and desperation. You can't do this to me. I have a mortgage. I have bills. You're destroying my life over one little misunderstanding. The room went silent again. Amara turned to look at Patricia directly. Ms. Winters, do you understand what you did to me today? I made a mistake. No. You looked at me and saw a threat. You assumed criminality. You treated me like garbage because of the color of my skin, and when confronted with evidence that you were wrong, you doubled down. Amara's voice remained steady, but there was pain underneath now. I've built a $50 million company. I employ 230 people. I've donated millions to charity and served on more nonprofit boards than I can count. And none of that mattered to you because you saw a black woman in a hoodie and decided I didn't belong. Patricia's face crumpled. I'm not racist. I have black friends. Patricia, David said quietly, please stop talking. But Patricia was beyond reason now. This is reverse discrimination. You're using your money and your connections to ruin an innocent person. Innocent? Amara's voice was incredulous now. Patricia, the security footage from today is going to be reviewed by federal regulators. Your pattern of behavior toward minority customers is going to be investigated by the State Attorney General's office. You did this to yourself. Margaret Torres finally found her voice. Patricia, you need to leave. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. As Patricia was led from the room, still protesting her innocence, Harrison turned back to Amara. Your conditions, he said heavily. They're comprehensive. They're necessary, Amara replied. The question is whether you want to implement them voluntarily or wait for federal regulators to impose something much more expensive. Harrison looked out the window at the city below, his city, the market he'd spent decades building relationships in. If we agree to your terms, will you make a public statement supporting the bank's commitment to change? Amara smiled for the first time since she'd walked into the building. Mr. Harrison, if you follow through on these commitments, I'll do more than that. I'll help you build the most inclusive banking operation on the West Coast. She stood and extended her hand. But if you don't, If this turns out to be empty promises and corporate theater, I'll make sure everyone knows that Meridian Bank can't be trusted with the community's future." Harrison stared at her outstretched hand for a long moment, then reached out and shook it. "You have a deal, Ms. Johnson." The elevator ride back to the main floor felt like descending from Mount Olympus to the mortal realm. Amara stood beside William Harrison, both of them silent as the floors ticked by. Through the elevator's glass walls, she could see employees at their desks, most of them stealing glances at their phones. The story was already spreading across social media. When the doors opened, the lobby had transformed into something resembling a media circus. The original 3 reporters had multiplied into 7, with camera crews from 3 different television stations setting up equipment near the customer service counter. Bank employees clustered in small groups, whispering anxiously among themselves. Rebecca Martinez from the Seattle Business Journal approached immediately. "Ms. Johnson, can you tell us what happened in that meeting?" Harrison stepped forward, his corporate instincts kicking in. "Ms. Martinez, Meridian Bank is committed to—" "Mr. Harrison," Amara interrupted gently, "I've got this." She walked to the center of the lobby, positioning herself where all the cameras could capture her clearly. The hoodie that had caused so much trouble was now her badge of honor, proof that success didn't have a uniform. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms, "what happened here today was unacceptable. But what happens next is what matters." The reporters leaned forward, sensing something significant was about to unfold. Meridian Bank has agreed to implement comprehensive changes to ensure this never happens again. Patricia Winters has been terminated for cause. The bank will institute mandatory bias training for all employees, establish a community advisory board with real oversight authority, and commit significant resources to supporting economic development in underserved communities. Thomas Park from Channel 7 raised his microphone. "Ms. Johnson, are you satisfied with the bank's response?" Amara paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm satisfied with their commitment to change. Whether I remain satisfied will depend on their actions over the coming months." "Will you be moving your business to another bank?" Rebecca Martinez asked. "That's the interesting thing about accountability," Amara replied. "Sometimes the institution that admits its mistakes and works to fix them becomes stronger than one that never had to confront its flaws. Meridian Bank has an opportunity to become a model for inclusive banking practices. I intend to hold them to that standard." She could see Harrison nodding approvingly from the edge of the crowd. He was getting a master class in crisis management from someone who had just been his victim. As the reporters fired follow-up questions, Amara noticed movement near the back of the lobby. Mike Rodriguez, the security guard, was approaching hesitantly. "Excuse me," he said quietly when the questions died down. "Ms. Johnson, could I speak with you for a moment?" The cameras swiveled toward him, and Mike's face flushed red. "Maybe privately?" "Mike, right?" Amara said warmly. "You spoke up today when it mattered. I think anything you want to say, these people should hear." Mike looked around at the cameras, clearly uncomfortable, but something in Amara's encouraging smile gave him courage. I wanted to apologize," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I should have said something 3 weeks ago, when Patricia called Dr. Williams suspicious. I should have said something last month with the Martinez family. I was a coward, and I'm sorry." The lobby went quiet. This wasn't the polished corporate apology they'd been expecting. "Mike," Amara said gently, "what are you going to do differently next time?" "I don't know if there'll be a next time," Mike replied. "Mr. Harrison, if you're planning to fire me, I understand. I failed to protect your customers." Harrison stepped forward, and for a moment, Amara saw something human break through his corporate facade. "Mike, you're not being fired. You're being promoted. Head of Customer Relations Security. Your job will be to make sure every person who walks through those doors feels safe and respected." Mike's eyes widened in shock. "Sir, I thank you." "Don't thank me," Harrison said, glancing at Amara. "Thank the woman who reminded us all what courage looks like." That's when Davidson approached with his phone in his hand, looking slightly dazed. "Amara, I just got off the phone with corporate. They want to offer you a seat on the bank's board of directors." The reporters perked up. This was an unexpected development. "They're offering me a seat on the board?" Amara raised an eyebrow. "That's interesting timing." "It's not just timing," Harrison interjected. "We've been looking for the right candidate for months. Someone with business acumen, community connections, and—" He paused, choosing his words carefully, "a proven ability to hold institutions accountable." Amara studied his face, looking for signs of corporate manipulation. But what she saw was genuine respect, the kind that comes only after someone has demonstrated real power. "I'll consider it," she said finally. "But understand, if I join your board, I won't be a token appointment. I'll be there to ensure real change happens." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Harrison replied. The lobby doors chimed again, and this time, the new arrival made everyone pause. Dr. Eleanor Williams, a distinguished black woman in her 70s wearing an elegant business suit, walked through the entrance with the kind of presence that commanded immediate attention. "Oh my," Margaret Torres whispered. "That's Dr. Williams from the medical center. The same Dr. Williams that Patricia had targeted 3 weeks ago." Dr. Williams approached the group slowly, her keen eyes taking in the cameras, the crowd, and the tension that still hung in the air. "Ms. Johnson," she said in a voice like warm honey over steel, "I heard about what happened here today. I came to tell you that you're not alone in this experience." She turned to address the cameras directly. 3 weeks ago, I came to this bank to make a routine deposit. I was treated with suspicion and disrespect by the same employee who was terminated today. I'm the chief of pediatrics at Seattle Children's Hospital. I've been banking at Meridian for 12 years, and I was made to feel like a criminal because I had the audacity to exist in this space while black. The reporters scrambled to get closer. This story was getting bigger by the minute. "But here's what I want everyone to understand," Dr. Williams continued. "This isn't about one racist teller. This is about a system that allows such behavior to continue unchecked. What Ms. Johnson did today, demanding accountability, refusing to accept empty apologies, that's how systems change." She walked over to Amara and extended her hand. "Thank you for having the courage to fight this battle publicly. For all of us who've been fighting it quietly for years." As the two women shook hands, Amara's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "I just received word that 3 other major Seattle banks have reached out to my office, requesting meetings to discuss their own diversity and inclusion policies." The implications were clear. Word was already spreading through the financial community. No one wanted to be the next Meridian Bank. "It seems," Amara continued, "that accountability is contagious." Harrison stepped forward again. "Ms. Johnson, if I may, I'd like to make one additional commitment. Meridian Bank will establish an annual scholarship program in your honor, supporting young entrepreneurs from underserved communities. $1 million over 5 years. The cameras flashed as Amara and Harrison shook hands again, but this time, the dynamic was completely different. This wasn't a powerful bank president extending charity to a victim. This was two equals making a deal that would benefit the entire community. Rebecca Martinez pushed forward with her microphone. Ms. Johnson, do you think today's events will lead to broader changes in how financial institutions serve minority communities? Amara looked around the lobby one more time, at Mike, who was standing straighter now with his new purpose, at David, who was already on his phone coordinating the bias training program, at Margaret, who was taking notes furiously as she planned the community advisory board, and at Dr. Williams, whose presence had transformed this from a single incident into a movement. I think, Amara said carefully, that what happened here today proves something important. When people with privilege and power choose to listen instead of defend, when they choose accountability over damage control, real change becomes possible. She paused, letting that sink in. But change doesn't happen in conference rooms or press conferences. It happens when institutions follow through on their commitments, day after day, customer by customer, until treating everyone with dignity becomes second nature instead of a corporate initiative. As the interviews wound down and the reporters began packing up their equipment, Harrison approached Amara one more time. Ms. Johnson, I need you to know, this wasn't just about avoiding bad publicity. What Patricia did today, what this bank allowed to happen, it was wrong. And I'm grateful you gave us a chance to make it right instead of just walking away. Amara studied his face for a long moment. Mr. Harrison, I didn't give you a chance to make it right. You had chances every day for 3 years while Patricia was treating customers like Dr. Williams as suspicious. I gave you consequences. What you do with those consequences is up to you. Fair enough, Harrison said. But I want you to know we're going to do better. I hope so, Amara replied, because the community is watching now. And if you don't follow through, if this turns out to be empty promises and corporate theater, there are a lot of Dr. Williams and Amara Johnsons out there who won't give you another chance. As Harrison walked back toward the elevators, Dr. Williams approached Amara one more time. My dear, she said quietly, you handled that beautifully. You turned a moment of humiliation into a teachable moment for an entire city. I had good examples to follow, Amara replied, thinking of all the civil rights leaders who had fought these battles before her, often without cameras or corporate apologies. The work isn't over, Dr. Williams warned. Real change takes time. I know, Amara said, but today feels like a good start. How do you think Amara's life will change after today? Will the bank actually follow through on its promises, or will she have to keep fighting? Share your thoughts below. 3 days later, Amara sat in her corner office on the 23rd floor of the Columbia Tower, watching the Seattle skyline emerge from the morning fog. The view included Meridian Bank's headquarters, a constant reminder of how quickly life could change. Her assistant, Maya, knocked and entered with a steaming cup of coffee and a tablet loaded with the morning's developments. The Today Show wants you on tomorrow morning, Maya reported, settling into the chair across from Amara's desk. CNN is requesting a follow-up interview, and someone from Oprah's team called about a possible feature. Amara took the coffee gratefully. What about the local response? That's the interesting part. Maya swiped through several screens. Meridian Bank has received over 300 applications for accounts since Monday. Apparently, people want a bank where they know discrimination will be taken seriously. And the other banks? All 5 have scheduled meetings with you by the end of next week. First National is so nervous they're sending their CEO personally. Maya grinned. They're calling it the Amara Johnson effect in banking circles. Amara's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She almost declined it, but something made her answer. Ms. Johnson? This is Jennifer Kim from Portland. I saw your story on the news, and I needed to call you. The woman's voice was shaking slightly. I'm listening, Amara said gently, putting the phone on speaker so Maya could hear. Something similar happened to me last month at my bank in Oregon. They questioned whether my business credit cards were really mine, made me prove my identity 3 times, and then suggested I might be more comfortable at a different branch. Amara and Maya exchanged glances. What did you do? Amara asked. Nothing. I was too embarrassed, too tired of fighting. But after seeing you stand up to them, I filed a complaint with the State Banking Commission this morning. Over the next hour, 7 more calls came in. A black doctor in San Francisco who had been treated suspiciously while trying to deposit a large insurance check. A Latina entrepreneur in Phoenix who had been questioned about the legitimacy of her business when applying for a loan. An Asian tech executive in Portland who had been asked for additional documentation that white applicants weren't required to provide. This is bigger than I thought, Amara murmured as Maya documented each call. That's when her office door burst open without warning. Amara looked up to see her younger brother Marcus striding in, his face split by an enormous grin. You didn't tell me you were about to become the most famous person in Seattle, he exclaimed, dropping into the chair beside Maya. Marcus was 2 years younger, but had inherited the same steel spine that had carried Amara through Harvard Business School and the early days of building tech-forward solutions. He ran a nonprofit focused on financial literacy in underserved communities, work that had suddenly become very relevant. I didn't plan on becoming famous, Amara replied. I just wanted to get a loan approved. Right? And Rosa Parks just wanted to sit down on the bus, Marcus shot back. Do you realize what you've done? My phone has been ringing all morning with community leaders wanting to know how to replicate what you did here. He pulled out his own tablet, showing her social media feeds full of similar stories. Look at this hashtag Amara Effect. People are sharing their own banking discrimination stories, but they're not just venting, they're organizing. Credit unions are seeing membership applications spike. Community banks are getting more business in 3 days than they usually see in 3 months. That afternoon, Amara found herself in the passenger seat of David Chen's Tesla, heading toward South Seattle for the groundbreaking ceremony of the Riverside Community Center. The loan had been approved with unprecedented speed. Harrison had personally expedited every step of the process. I still can't believe Patricia thought you were there to rob the bank, David said as they navigated through downtown traffic. A hoodie and sneakers, and suddenly you're a criminal mastermind. The sad part is, she probably doesn't even think she's racist, Amara replied. She's just spent so long swimming in a culture that associates blackness with danger that she can't see her own biases. They pulled into the construction site, where a small crowd had already gathered. Mayor Sarah Daniels was there, along with several city council members, community leaders, and, to Amara's surprise, William Harrison himself. He didn't have to come, David observed. No, he didn't, Amara agreed. That's actually encouraging. As they approached the podium set up near the construction trailers, Amara noticed a familiar face in the crowd, Dr. Eleanor Williams, standing beside a group of other professional-looking black women. During the ceremony, as Mayor Daniels handed Amara the ceremonial shovel, the older woman caught her eye and nodded approvingly. The real surprise came during the reception afterward. Harrison approached her with a man she didn't recognize, tall, distinguished, with the bearing of someone used to being the smartest person in the room. Amara, I'd like you to meet Dr. James Washington, Harrison said. He's the president of Seattle University's business school. Dr. Washington extended his hand with a warm smile. Ms. Johnson, I've been following your story with great interest. I have a proposition for you. Amara shook his hand, intrigued. I'm listening. We want to create a case study about what happened at Meridian Bank. Not just the discrimination, but your response, how you turned a moment of humiliation into systemic change. We'd like to teach it in our MBA program. That's flattering, but I'm not sure. There's more, Dr. Washington continued. We want you to co-teach the class. Help us train the next generation of business leaders to recognize and address institutional bias. Amara looked around at the construction site, where dozens of workers would soon be employed building something that would serve the community for decades. Then she looked at Harrison, who was watching the conversation with obvious interest. What would the class cover? She asked. Business ethics, crisis management, stakeholder relations, community engagement, all through the lens of what you accomplished this week. But more than that, we want to teach students that business success and social justice aren't competing interests. They're complementary forces. Later that evening, Amara sat in her living room with a glass of wine and her laptop, scrolling through emails that had poured in throughout the day. Job offers from major corporations wanting to hire her as a diversity consultant. Speaking requests from conferences around the country. Interview requests from business publications. But the email that made her pause came from an unexpected source, Patricia Winters. Ms. Johnson, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I understand if you delete this without reading it. But I need to say something. I've spent the last 3 days thinking about what happened, and I realized that you were right. I saw you and made assumptions based on how you looked, not who you are or what you represent. That wasn't a mistake, it was prejudice, and I'm ashamed of it. I can't undo what I did, and I can't take back the things I said. But I want you to know that I've enrolled in cultural sensitivity training, and I'm working with a therapist to understand how I became someone who could treat another human being that way. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness or to make myself feel better. I'm writing because you deserve to know that your courage to confront me has forced me to confront myself. I hope the community center is everything you envisioned. Patricia Winters. Amara read the email twice, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Anger at what Patricia had put her through. Skepticism about whether this newfound awareness was genuine. But also, surprisingly, a small glimmer of hope. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. The caller ID showed Dr. Williams. Eleanor, how are you? I'm wonderful, dear. I just wanted to thank you again for what you did. But I also wanted to tell you something interesting. What's that? I had lunch today with 3 other doctors who've had similar experiences at various banks around the city. We've decided to form an investment group, the Dignity Capital Collective. We're going to fund minority-owned businesses and support financial institutions that demonstrate real commitment to equality. Amara sat up straighter. Eleanor, that's brilliant. It was your example that inspired it. You showed us that we don't have to accept discrimination as the price of doing business. We can use our economic power to create change. After hanging up, Amara walked to her window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Jennifer Kim in Portland was filing her complaint. Marcus was fielding calls from community organizers. Dr. Williams was building a coalition of investors committed to economic justice. The ripple effects were spreading far beyond one confrontation in a bank lobby. Her laptop chimed with a new email, this one from Harvard Business School, asking if she'd consider delivering the keynote address at their Diversity and Inclusion Symposium. As she read the invitation, Amara realized that what had started as a routine banking appointment had become something much larger. She hadn't just confronted one person's prejudice, she'd challenged a system that had been allowed to operate unchecked for too long. 2 weeks after the Meridian Bank incident, Amara stood in the green room of CNN's Seattle studio, adjusting her blazer and trying to calm her nerves. Through the monitor, she could see Anderson Cooper finishing up the previous segment, his silver hair perfectly styled under the studio lights. "Ms. Johnson?" A young production assistant appeared at her elbow. "You're on in 2 minutes." Amara nodded, checking her reflection one more time in the mirror. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a sharp navy blazer over dark jeans, professional but not corporate, powerful but approachable. The hoodie that had started this whole journey hung in her closet at home, already becoming a symbol she wasn't sure she wanted to carry. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya, watching from the office. "You've got this. Remember, speak from the heart." Another text from Marcus. "Mom would be so proud. Dad too. Show them who we raised." Their parents had died in a car accident when Amara was 25 and Marcus was 23, just as she was finishing her MBA. They'd never seen her build tech-forward solutions, never witnessed her success, but Amara carried their voices with her into every boardroom, every negotiation, every moment when she had to choose between playing it safe and doing what was right. "Ms. Johnson, we're ready for you." With me now is Amara Johnson, the Seattle tech CEO whose confrontation with a racist bank teller has sparked a national conversation about discrimination in financial services, Anderson Cooper said as Amara settled into the chair across from him. "Amara, it's been 2 weeks since this incident. How has your life changed?" Amara looked directly into the camera, aware that millions of people were watching. "Anderson, the most important thing that's changed isn't my life. It's the conversation we're having as a country. In the past 2 weeks, I've received over 1,000 calls and emails from people sharing their own experiences with discrimination in banking, housing, retail, healthcare. The Meridian Bank incident was just the tip of the iceberg. You've been offered book deals, speaking engagements, consulting contracts. Some critics are saying you're capitalizing on your victimization. How do you respond to that?" Amara had expected this question. "I think it's interesting that when someone experiences discrimination and stays quiet, they're praised for their dignity and grace. But when they speak out and demand accountability, they're accused of seeking attention or profit." She leaned forward slightly. "Anderson, I didn't choose to become the face of banking discrimination. I was forced into that role by someone else's prejudice. But now that I'm here, I have a responsibility to use this platform constructively." "And how are you doing that?" 3 ways. First, I'm working directly with financial institutions to implement real policy changes, not just PR campaigns. Second, I'm helping other discrimination victims find their voices and pursue accountability through proper channels. And third, I'm using my business success to create economic opportunities in underserved communities. Cooper nodded. "Tell me about the Dignity Capital Collective you've helped establish." "It's exactly what it sounds like, investment capital deployed with dignity as a core principle." Dr. Eleanor Williams, who had her own experience with discrimination at Meridian Bank, leads a group of high-net-worth individuals who are funding minority-owned businesses and supporting institutions that demonstrate genuine commitment to equality. "How much capital are we talking about?" $50 million to start, with commitments for more based on results. Cooper's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's significant money. Discrimination is expensive, Anderson. It costs our economy billions of dollars in lost productivity, missed opportunities, and wasted human capital. Dignity capital isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about doing the smart thing." During the commercial break, Cooper's demeanor shifted from professional to personal. "Off the record, how are you really holding up? This level of attention can be overwhelming." Amara appreciated the genuine concern in his voice. It's been intense. My company is trying to stay focused on our core business while I'm fielding interview requests and speaking engagements. My brother thinks I should run for mayor. My therapist thinks I should take a vacation. Cooper laughed. What do you think you should do? I think I should figure out how to use this moment responsibly without losing myself in it. When they came back from commercial, Cooper's tone was more personal. Amara, you've mentioned that your parents died when you were young. How do you think they would have reacted to what happened at Meridian Bank? Amara felt her chest tighten. My father was a mechanic who never made it past high school, but could quote James Baldwin from memory. My mother was a nurse who worked double shifts to pay for my college applications. They taught me that dignity isn't something you ask for, it's something you demand. She paused, collecting herself. They would have been heartbroken that I had to experience what I did, but they would have been proud of how I handled it. You've become something of an accidental activist. Is that a role you're comfortable with? I'm not an activist, Anderson. I'm a businesswoman who refuses to accept discrimination as normal. There's a difference. As the interview was wrapping up, Cooper said something that caught Amara off guard. We've received a request from someone who wants to respond to your story. Patricia Winters, the former bank teller, has asked to make a statement. Would you like to hear it? Amara's pulse quickened. She hadn't expected this. Yes, I would. Cooper looked at a monitor off camera as Patricia's pre-recorded video began to play. The woman on screen looked nothing like the hostile teller from 2 weeks ago. Her face was drawn, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice barely above a whisper. Ms. Johnson, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I've spent 2 weeks looking at myself in the mirror, trying to understand how I became someone who could treat another human being the way I treated you. Patricia's voice cracked slightly. I've started therapy, and I've learned that the prejudices I carried weren't just my own. They were passed down through generations of my family, reinforced by media I consumed, validated by echo chambers I lived in. None of that excuses what I did, but it helps me understand how I got there. She looked directly into the camera. I want to tell every person watching this, if you see someone being discriminated against, speak up. Don't be like me. Don't let fear or prejudice turn you into someone you're ashamed to be. The video ended, and the studio was quiet for a moment. Your response? Cooper asked gently. Amara took a breath, feeling the weight of millions of eyes on her. I appreciate Patricia's willingness to examine her own behavior and seek help. That takes courage. But individual growth, while important, isn't enough. We need systemic change in institutions that allowed her prejudices to flourish unchecked for years. Do you forgive her? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Amara thought about the email Patricia had sent, about the phone calls from other discrimination victims, about the broader movement that had grown from this one incident. Forgiveness is personal, she said finally. Accountability is institutional. Patricia is working on herself, and I respect that. But Meridian Bank and thousands of other institutions need to work on themselves too. That's where the real change happens. After the interview, Amara sat in the back of an Uber heading to the airport, scrolling through the responses already flooding social media. The hashtag #DignityCapital was trending, with people sharing stories of businesses and institutions that had treated them with respect, and those that hadn't. Her phone rang. William Harrison from Meridian Bank. Amara, I just watched the CNN interview. Masterful handling of Patricia's statement. Thank you, William. How are things at the bank? Better than I expected. Account applications are still coming in, and 3 major corporations have moved their business to us specifically because of the changes we've implemented. Your community advisory board is making real recommendations that we're actually following. He paused. I wanted to ask you again about joining our board of directors. The shareholders' meeting is next month, and... William, Amara interrupted gently, I've been thinking about that offer. And? Amara looked out at the Seattle skyline rushing past, thinking about all the opportunities in front of her. The book deals, the speaking engagements, the consulting contracts, the board positions, the political overtures. I'm going to decline the board seat, she said finally. There was silence on the other end of the line. Not because I don't trust you to follow through, she continued, but because I think I can do more good from the outside, holding multiple institutions accountable rather than being captured by one. I understand, Harrison said, though his disappointment was audible. What will you do instead? Amara smiled, a plan crystallizing in her mind for the first time. I'm going to start something new. That evening, back in her Seattle office, Amara called an emergency meeting with Maya and Marcus. The three of them sat around her conference table, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I've made a decision, she announced. I'm stepping back as CEO of Tech Forward Solutions. Maya and Marcus both started to speak at once, but Amara held up her hand. Not stepping down, stepping back. I'm promoting Jennifer Kim to CEO. Jennifer was her VP of Operations, a brilliant strategist who'd been with the company since the early days. I'll remain as executive chair, but I'm going to focus my energy on something bigger. Which is? Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. The Dignity Institute, Amara said. A nonprofit that works with institutions to identify and eliminate discriminatory practices before they become public relations disasters. We'll do consulting, training, policy development, and victim advocacy. She pulled out a folder she'd been assembling during the flight. We'll fund it through the Dignity Capital Collective, and we'll partner with universities to develop research and curricula. The goal isn't just to help individual victims, it's to change how institutions think about inclusion from the ground up. Maya was taking notes furiously. What about all the speaking requests, the book deals, the media opportunities? I'll be selective. The platform is powerful, but it's not an end in itself. Every interview, every speech, every article needs to advance the mission. Marcus leaned back in his chair, grinning. Mom and Dad would have loved this. I hope so, Amara said, because it's going to be the fight of our lives. 6 months later, the grand ballroom of the Seattle Convention Center sparkled with the kind of elegance reserved for the city's most prestigious events. The annual Excellence in Community Leadership Gala drew 500 of Seattle's most influential citizens, business leaders, politicians, nonprofit directors, and media personalities all gathered to celebrate those who had made significant impacts on the community. Amara stood at the edge of the crowd, elegant in a midnight blue evening gown that was a far cry from the hoodie that had started her journey. She watched the familiar dance of networking, the careful choreography of power and influence that she had learned to navigate so well. But tonight felt different. Tonight, she was here not just as a successful CEO, but as someone who had fundamentally changed how business was done in Seattle. Quite a difference from 6 months ago, a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to find David Chin approaching, looking comfortable in his new role as senior commercial lending manager. The promotion had been good for him. He seemed more confident, more purposeful. David, she smiled warmly. How are things at the bank? Revolutionary, he said with a grin. Do you know we've increased our minority business lending by 43% since we implemented the new policies? And our customer satisfaction scores are the highest in the region. That's wonderful to hear. It's more than wonderful, it's profitable. Harrison keeps telling everyone that the best decision he ever made was listening to you instead of just trying to manage you. Amara raised an eyebrow. Is that what he tells people? Well, he's a corporate executive. He's not going to admit he was terrified of a woman in a hoodie, David laughed. But between you and me, you scared him straight. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of someone clearing their throat behind them. Amara turned to find Patricia Winters standing there, looking older and more worn than she had 6 months ago. The sight of her former tormentor sent a jolt of surprise through Amara, but she kept her expression neutral. "Ms. Johnson," Patricia said quietly, "I was hoping I could speak with you." David's jaw tightened. "Patricia, what are you doing here?" "It's okay, David," Amara said calmly. "Ms. Winters, what can I do for you?" Patricia looked around the elegant ballroom, clearly out of place among the Seattle elite. I wanted to apologize. Again. Properly this time." "Go ahead." Patricia took a shaky breath. "I lost my job because of what I did to you. I lost my house. My husband left me. My kids won't speak to me." Amara waited, saying nothing. "And for months, I told myself it was all your fault, that you destroyed my life over one mistake, that you were the real racist, using your power to ruin an innocent person." The words hung in the air between them. "But that wasn't true, was it?" Patricia continued, tears forming in her eyes. "I've spent 6 months in therapy, trying to understand how I became the kind of person who could look at a successful businesswoman and see a criminal. And the truth is, you weren't the first." Amara felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What do you mean?" "There were others. Over the years. People I treated badly because they didn't look like what I thought a bank customer should look like. Dr. Williams was just one. There was a young Latino man who wanted to start a landscaping business. I made him wait 2 hours because I was busy. A black college student trying to open her first checking account. I kept asking for more and more documentation until she gave up and left." David looked sick. "Patricia, I told myself I was protecting the bank," Patricia continued. "I told myself I was just being careful. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared of changes I didn't understand. Scared of losing my place in a world that was leaving me behind. And I took that fear out on people who didn't deserve it." Amara studied Patricia's face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity. What she found instead was something rarer, genuine recognition of harm caused. "Ms. Winters," she said quietly, "what do you want from me?" "Nothing," Patricia replied. "I know I can't undo what I did. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. I needed you to know that I understand now. What I did to you, what I did to all those other people, it was wrong. And it came from an ugly place inside me that I didn't even want to admit existed." She reached into her purse and pulled out a newspaper clipping, the Seattle Business Journal article about the Community Advisory Board that Amara now chaired. "I've been following what you've done since that day. The changes at the bank, the community center, the scholarship program. You turned something terrible into something beautiful." Patricia's voice cracked. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that because of what happened, because you held me accountable, I'm trying to become a better person. I volunteer now at a food bank in Tacoma. I'm taking classes about unconscious bias. I'm trying to teach my grandchildren to see people the way I should have seen you." The ballroom continued to buzz around them, but for Amara, everything else had faded away. This moment, this unexpected reckoning, was more powerful than any corporate apology or policy change. "Patricia," she said finally, "do you remember what you said to me that day? You people?" Patricia flinched. Yes. Do you understand now what those words meant? What they revealed about how you saw me? Yes. The word was barely a whisper. Good. Because understanding that, really understanding it, is the only way any of this means anything. Amara paused, considering her next words carefully. I'm not going to tell you you're forgiven, Patricia. Forgiveness isn't something you can earn through suffering or good intentions. But I will tell you this, the fact that you're here, the fact that you're trying to understand and change, that matters. Patricia nodded, tears flowing freely now. There's something else I need to tell you. Something I've never told anyone. Amara waited. My daughter, my youngest daughter, she's adopted. From Guatemala. She's beautiful and smart, and everything I could have wanted in a child. David looked confused, but Amara was beginning to understand. Last month, she came home from college crying, Patricia continued. Someone at her bank had treated her exactly the way I treated you. Made her feel like she didn't belong, like she was suspicious, like she was less than. Patricia's voice broke completely. And when she told me what happened, I saw myself in that teller's face. I saw the hate and fear I had carried around for so long. And I realized that if my own daughter wasn't safe from people like me, then no one was. The confession hung between them like a bridge, painful but necessary. That's when I knew I had to find you, Patricia said. Not to make myself feel better, but to tell you that what you did mattered. That the changes you forced at the bank, the awareness you created, it's protecting people like my daughter now. Amara felt tears prick her own eyes. The complexity of human nature, the possibility of redemption, the long arc of justice bending towards something better. It was all there in Patricia's broken confession. What's your daughter's name? She asked gently. Maria. Maria Winters. She's studying social work at UW. Patricia, Amara said, I want you to give Maria my card. Tell her if she ever wants to talk about what happened to her, or if she wants to get involved in the work we're doing with the Community Advisory Board, I'd like to meet her. Patricia's eyes widened in shock. You would do that? Not for you, Amara said honestly. For her. For every Maria who shouldn't have to face what we both faced. As Patricia walked away, clutching Amara's business card like a lifeline, David turned to her with amazement. How do you do that? He asked. Do what? Turn pain into purpose. Turn enemies into. I don't know what Patricia is now, but she's not an enemy anymore. Amara watched Patricia disappear into the crowd, a broken woman trying to rebuild herself into something better. David, 6 months ago, I had a choice. I could let what Patricia did to me make me smaller, more bitter, more defensive. Or I could use it to make the world a little bit better. She turned to face him fully. The truth is, Patricia was never my real enemy. The real enemy was the system that allowed her to hurt people for years without consequences. The real enemy was the assumption that treating people badly was just the cost of doing business. The lights dimmed as the evening's program was about to begin. Somewhere in the ballroom, Mayor Daniels was preparing to present Amara with the Community Leadership Award. Somewhere else, Dr. Williams was networking with other medical professionals about expanding the scholarship program. And somewhere in Tacoma, Patricia was probably driving home, wondering if redemption was actually possible. Come on, Amara said to David. Let's go change the world some more. 1 year later, the morning news played softly in Amara's corner office as she reviewed the quarterly reports from the Riverside Community Center. The numbers were extraordinary. 300 jobs created, 92 small businesses launched, a 40% reduction in youth unemployment in the surrounding neighborhood. What had started as a response to discrimination had become a model for community-driven economic development. But success, Amara had learned, often brought its own challenges. Ms. Johnson? Maya, her assistant, knocked on the doorframe. There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Amara looked up from her reports. Who is it? Maria Winters. The name sent a jolt of recognition through Amara. Patricia's daughter, the young woman she'd offered to mentor a year ago, but who had never taken her up on the offer. Send her in. Maria Winters was a striking young woman in her early 20s, with warm brown eyes and the kind of quiet intensity that Amara recognized in herself. She wore jeans and a university sweatshirt, and her hands shook slightly as she entered the office. Ms. Johnson, thank you for seeing me. I know you don't know me, but I know exactly who you are, Maria. Please sit down. Can I get you coffee? Water? Coffee would be great, thanks. Maria settled into the chair across from Amara's desk, looking around at the awards, the photos with community leaders, the framed newspaper articles chronicling Amara's rise to prominence. As Maya brought the coffee, Amara studied the young woman's face, noting the resemblance to Patricia in the bone structure, but something entirely different in the expression, an openness that Patricia had lost somewhere along the way. What can I do for you, Maria? I need your help, Maria said simply. But first, I need to tell you something that's going to sound crazy. Amara leaned back in her chair. I'm listening. My mother, Patricia, she's been volunteering at the food bank in Tacoma for over a year now. She's taken classes on unconscious bias. She's been seeing a therapist. She's really, genuinely trying to change. That's good to hear. But there's something she doesn't know. Something I've never told her. Maria took a shaky breath. The day she confronted you at the bank, I was there. Amara's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. What? I was in line at the ATM. I saw the whole thing. I watched my mother, the woman who raised me, who told me every day that I was loved and valuable, treat you like garbage because of how you looked. The office fell silent, except for the distant hum of traffic from the street below. Maria. I left, Maria continued, tears forming in her eyes. I couldn't watch anymore. I went to my car and I cried for 2 hours. Because in that moment, I realized that the woman who had shown me nothing but love was capable of showing other people. People who looked like me, nothing but hate. Amara set down her coffee cup carefully. Why didn't you say anything? To her, to anyone? Because I was a coward, Maria said simply. I was 22 years old, getting ready to graduate with a degree in social work, and I was too scared to confront my own mother about racism. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. But I watched what happened next. I saw the news coverage. I saw how you handled it, with strength and dignity and intelligence. And I saw how it changed everything, not just for the bank, but for the whole community. Maria, what's happening now? Why are you here? Because it's happening again, Maria said, her voice tight with urgency. And this time, I can't be a coward. She pulled out her phone and showed Amara a video. The footage was shaky, clearly shot on a cell phone, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed the interior of a coffee shop and a heated argument between a barista and a customer. This is from yesterday, Maria explained, at a coffee shop near the University of Washington campus. On the screen, Amara could see a young black man in university clothing trying to pay for his coffee, while a white barista, a woman in her 40s, refused to serve him. I don't take food stamps here, the barista was saying loudly. You need to go somewhere else. Ma'am, this is a debit card, the student replied patiently. I'm trying to pay for my coffee. I know what I see, the barista snapped. You people always try to pull something. Amara's blood ran cold. The same words, the same tone, the same ugly assumptions. Who is she? Amara asked quietly. Her name is Jennifer Walsh. She's the assistant manager. And Ms. Johnson, she's Patricia's sister. The phone slipped from Amara's hands. Maria, are you telling me that racism runs in my family? Yes. Maria's voice was steady now, filled with a kind of grim determination. Patricia isn't some isolated case. This is generational. This is systemic. And I can't pretend it's not happening anymore. Amara picked up the phone and watched the video again. The young man's patience, his dignity in the face of humiliation, it was all too familiar. What do you want me to do? She asked. I want you to do what you did a year ago. Hold people accountable. Make it impossible for this to continue. Maria, that's your aunt. Your family. No, Maria said firmly. My family is the people who raised me to believe that everyone deserves dignity and respect. The people who taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. She leaned forward in her chair. Jennifer Walsh isn't my family. She's just someone who shares my DNA and my last name. The student in that video, Marcus Thompson, he's a junior at UW studying engineering. He's more my family than she'll ever be. The name hit Amara like a physical blow. Marcus, the name she'd specifically been told not to use for protagonists, but here it was, attached to a real person facing real discrimination. You know him? We're in the same social work program. We've been friends since freshman year. He's brilliant, kind, funny. Everything you'd want in a friend or colleague. And yesterday, he was humiliated in public because Jennifer Walsh looked at him and saw a stereotype instead of a person. Amara walked to her window, looking out at the city she'd grown to love, the community she'd worked so hard to change. Below, construction workers were putting finishing touches on another affordable housing project she'd helped finance. In the distance, she could see the gleaming tower of Meridian Bank, where Mike Rodriguez was probably welcoming customers with the respect they deserved. Change was possible. She'd proven that. But change was also fragile, constantly under threat from people who preferred the old ways, the comfortable prejudices, the easy assumptions. Maria, she said finally, if I do this, if I go after your aunt the way I went after your mother, it's going to destroy your family. There won't be any coming back from it. My family was destroyed the day my mother called you people, Maria replied. It was just better hidden then. She stood up and joined Amara at the window. Ms. Johnson, a year ago you had a choice. You could have just taken your business elsewhere, found a different bank, moved on with your life. Instead, you chose to fight. You chose to make it impossible for the next person to face what you faced. Amara nodded slowly. Now I have the same choice, Maria continued. I can pretend I didn't see that video. I can protect my family's reputation and let Marcus and people like him continue to face humiliation. Or I can do what you did, choose courage over comfort. Amara turned away from the window to face the young woman whose moral clarity put most adults to shame. Maria, do you understand what you're asking? This won't just affect Jennifer. It'll affect Patricia too. All the progress she's made, all the work she's done to change, people will judge her by her sister's actions. Then maybe Patricia needs to make a choice too, Maria said quietly. Maybe she needs to decide whether protecting her sister is more important than protecting people like Marcus. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Amara realized she was looking at the next generation of leaders, people who wouldn't accept half measures or comfortable compromises, who understood that progress required constant vigilance. All right, she said finally. Show me everything you have. Maria's face broke into the first smile Amara had seen from her. I was hoping you'd say that. She pulled out a folder thick with documents. I've been investigating this for 3 days. Jennifer Walsh has a pattern. 5 documented incidents over the past 6 months, all involving customers of color. The coffee shop's corporate office has received complaints, but they've been buried in bureaucracy. And the video? Marcus gave me permission to use it. He wants to fight this, but he doesn't have the resources or connections to take on a corporate chain. Amara nodded, her mind already working through the strategy. Corporate vulnerability points, media contacts, community leverage, regulatory pressure. All the tools she'd learned to use in her year as Seattle's unofficial accountability enforcer. "There's one more thing," Maria said. "I want to be involved. Not just as an informant or a witness. I want to help lead this fight." "Maria, this could get ugly. Your family." "My family made their choices," Maria interrupted. "Now I'm making mine." She extended her hand toward Amara, the gesture formal and final. "Partners?" Amara looked at the young woman, Patricia's daughter, Jennifer's niece, Marcus's friend, and most importantly, someone who had chosen justice over blood, and saw the future of the movement she'd started. "Partners," she agreed, shaking Maria's hand. 3 weeks later, the Emerald City Coffee corporate headquarters buzzed with nervous energy as Amara and Maria sat across from CEO Jonathan Mitchell and his legal team. The conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay, but no one was admiring the scenery. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. The video of Jennifer Walsh's treatment of Marcus Thompson had gone viral within hours of Amara posting it on social media. The hashtag #NotInMyCity had trended nationally. 3 other customers had come forward with similar stories about Jennifer. And most importantly, Marcus himself had emerged as a powerful voice for change, his articulate interviews transforming him from victim to advocate. "Mr. Mitchell," Amara said, sliding a folder across the polished table, "these are our terms." Mitchell, a man in his 50s who looked like he hadn't slept in days, opened the folder with shaking hands. His company's stock price had dropped 12% since the story broke. "Jennifer Walsh is terminated immediately with cause," Amara continued. "All employees receive mandatory bias training within 60 days. You establish a customer complaint hotline with independent oversight, and you commit $500,000 over 3 years to scholarship programs for students from underrepresented communities." "Ms. Johnson," Mitchell's head counsel interjected, "these terms are quite demanding." "They're non-negotiable," Maria said firmly. At 23, she'd discovered she had a natural talent for corporate intimidation. Every day you delay, more stories come out. This morning, the Seattle Times published an investigation into your company's hiring practices. Do you really want to drag this out? Mitchell signed the agreement without another word. As they left the corporate office, Amara's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can we meet?" "Patricia. She wants to see us," Amara told Maria. "I figured she would eventually," Maria replied. "She's probably heard about Jennifer by now." They agreed to meet at Pike Place Market, in the small cafe where Amara had first learned about Maria's connection to the case. The location felt symbolic, a public space where honesty would be forced by the presence of witnesses. Patricia was already waiting when they arrived, looking older and more fragile than Amara remembered. The year of trying to rebuild her life had taken a visible toll, but there was something different in her posture, a kind of resignation mixed with determination. "Hello, Patricia," Amara said carefully. "Ms. Johnson." "Maria." Patricia's voice was hoarse, as if she'd been crying. "Thank you for coming." They sat at a small table near the window, the market's bustling energy a stark contrast to the tension between them. "I suppose you want to talk about Jennifer," Patricia said finally. "Actually," Maria replied, "we want to talk about you." Patricia looked surprised. "Me?" "Mom, Patricia," Maria corrected herself. You've spent a year trying to become a better person. You've done the work, taken the classes, volunteered your time. But now you have to choose. Choose what? Choose whether that change was real or just performance, Amara said gently. Your sister is facing the same consequences you faced a year ago. The question is, are you going to defend her behavior or stand up for what's right? Patricia stared out the window at the market vendors, the tourists, the daily flow of humanity that somehow managed to coexist despite all their differences. Jennifer called me yesterday, she said finally. She was screaming about how you were destroying our family, how you had some personal vendetta, how none of this was fair. She paused, her hands trembling slightly, and for a moment, just a moment, I wanted to agree with her. I wanted to believe that you were the problem, not us. But then I watched the video, Patricia continued. I watched Jennifer look at that young man and see exactly what I saw when I looked at you. And I realized that everything I've learned, everything I've worked to change in myself, none of it matters if I don't apply it to my own family. Maria leaned forward. What are you saying? I'm saying Jennifer was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. And she deserves the consequences she's facing. The words seemed to physically pain her, but Patricia continued. I'm also saying that I understand now why Maria couldn't tell me she was at the bank that day. Because watching someone you love reveal themselves to be capable of such ugliness, it breaks something inside you. Tears began flowing down Patricia's cheeks. Maria, I am so sorry. Sorry for what you witnessed. Sorry for what it taught you about me. Sorry that you felt you couldn't trust me with the truth. Maria reached across the table and took her mother's hand. Patricia, and Ms. Johnson, Patricia interrupted. I need to thank you. Amara blinked in surprise. Thank me? For holding me accountable. For refusing to let me off the hook. For showing me that real change requires more than just feeling sorry for yourself. Patricia wiped her eyes with a napkin. A year ago, I thought I was a good person who made a mistake. I thought you were attacking me unfairly. But I wasn't a good person. I was just a person who hadn't been caught being bad yet. What happens now? Maria asked. Now I do something I should have done a year ago, Patricia said. I take responsibility for my family's actions instead of just my own. She pulled out her phone and showed them a Facebook post she'd written, but not yet published. My name is Patricia Winters. A year ago, I racially profiled and humiliated Amara Johnson at Meridian Bank because of my own prejudices and fear. This week, my sister Jennifer Walsh did the same thing to a young student named Marcus Thompson. I want everyone to know that what we did was wrong. It was born from ignorance and hatred that we learned and carried and passed on to others. Amara Johnson held me accountable for my actions, and now I'm holding my sister accountable for hers. Racism isn't something that happens to other people by other people. It's something that happens in our families, our workplaces, our communities. And it only stops when we choose to stop it, even when that choice costs us something. I've lost friends over this post. I may lose family too. But I won't lose my integrity again. The post was raw, honest, and would undoubtedly cause a firestorm in Patricia's social circles. Are you sure you want to post this? Amara asked. I'm sure, Patricia replied. It's time to choose love over comfort. As they prepared to leave the cafe, Maria surprised both women by standing up and hugging Patricia tightly. I love you, she whispered. I've always loved you. But I love the person you're becoming even more than I loved the person you were. Patricia broke down completely then, holding her daughter as if she'd found something precious that she'd thought was lost forever. I love you too, Mija. And I promise I'll never give you reason to be ashamed of me again. Watching the reunion, Amara felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Not just for justice or accountability, but for the possibility that love could be stronger than hate, that families could choose to grow instead of just protecting each other's worst instincts. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "The scholarship committee at UW wants to meet with you about expanding the program. Also, I'm starting a student organization for social justice. Want to be our faculty advisor?" She showed the message to Maria, who grinned. "I think that's a yes." 6 months later, the Riverside Community Center's main auditorium was packed for the second annual Accountability in Action Symposium. On stage, a panel of speakers shared their experiences and insights. Dr. Williams talking about systemic change in healthcare, Mike Rodriguez discussing security reform in banking, Marcus Thompson explaining youth activism, and Maria Winters outlining her new nonprofit focused on family healing after racial trauma. In the audience, Patricia sat in the front row, taking notes like a dedicated student. Next to her, Jennifer Walsh, who had, after months of therapy and community service, asked to attend, listened with the kind of attention that comes from genuine remorse. Amara stood at the podium for her closing remarks, looking out at the diverse crowd that had gathered to continue the work they'd started 2 years ago. "When I walked into Meridian Bank wearing a hoodie," she began, "I thought I was just trying to get a loan approved. I had no idea I was starting a movement." Laughter rippled through the audience. "But here's what I've learned. Change doesn't happen because one person has a bad day and decides to fight back. Change happens because people choose love over fear, courage over comfort, and accountability over excuses." She gestured to the panel behind her. "Every person on this stage has made that choice." Marcus chose to turn his humiliation into advocacy. Maria chose justice over family loyalty, and then found a way to have both. Patricia and Jennifer chose growth over defensiveness. Dr. Williams chose mentorship over bitterness. The applause was warm and sustained. "But the most important choice," Amara continued, "is the one you make tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day after that. Because love isn't a feeling, it's a practice. And building a just community isn't a destination. It's a journey we take together." After the event, as the crowd dispersed into the Seattle evening, Amara found herself standing outside the community center with David Chun, who had become not just a banker but a genuine friend. "You know what's funny?" he said, watching Patricia and Jennifer walk toward their car, talking quietly but earnestly. "What's that?" 2 years ago, if someone had told me that Patricia Winters would become one of our most effective community advocates, I'd have laughed. Amara smiled. "People can surprise you." "Speaking of surprises," David said, pulling out his phone, "I have some news. The Federal Reserve is using Meridian's diversity and inclusion program as a model for other banks. They want you to testify before Congress about community banking reform." "Congress?" Amara raised an eyebrow. "That's a big stage." "You've been preparing for that stage your whole life," he replied. "You just didn't know it." As they walked toward their cars, Amara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. What had started with discrimination and humiliation had become something beautiful, a community committed to holding itself accountable, a family that chose love over loyalty to dysfunction, and a movement that proved change was not only possible, but inevitable when enough people decided to make it happen. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Thank you for teaching me that courage is contagious. See you at the congressional hearing." Amara smiled as she typed back. "Wouldn't miss it. We have more work to do." The Seattle skyline glittered ahead of her as she drove home, and for the first time in years, the future felt not just hopeful but bright with possibility. Love had won, Not the easy love that ignores hard truths, but the difficult love that demands justice, accountability, and growth. And in the end, that was the only kind of love that could change the world.